Susanna Peace Lovell is the guest on the show today, and we have an amazing conversation all about her family's autism journey. Her daughter, Arizona, is a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, anxiety, and food allergies. And she has written a wonderful book, Your True Self is Enough. Arizona, her daughter, wrote the foreword to the book, and she really shares today her journey of when her daughter was born, she had food allergies. She was crying all the time. Then when they got that all situated, she really felt like developmentally something is not clicking here. This is not right. She seems like she's struggling. They talked to people in their area. They said, don't worry about it. She's fine. She just had all those allergies. Now she's going to develop. And we talk all about what that journey looked like, what her school journey looked like, how she's doing now. This is really a wonderful, thought out book that is easy to consume. I think as clinicians, it makes us so much better when we have on the podcast autistic individuals and autism moms, autism dads, because that allows us to understand on a better level. We're not truly going to understand, but understand how they are working through the autism journey. So I'm excited for this conversation today with Susanna Peace Lovell.
You're listening to Autism Outreach Podcast, a podcast full of ready-to-use strategies to help those with autism strengthen their communication skills. Here's your host, Rose Griffin of ABA Speech, a speech therapist and board-certified behavior analyst who shares tips you can use in your next therapy session.
Welcome to the Autism Outreach Podcast. Today we have a wonderful guest. We have Susanna Peace Lovell with us. Thank you so much for joining us and coming on the show.
Hi, Rose. So happy to be here.
And I came across your book, Your True Self is Enough. And I feel like I want to write a book someday, but it seems very daunting. So kudos to you for writing a book. I always think like someday, I'm always like so busy. I'm like, maybe someday, but this is a very nice read for practitioners and parents. And I like that you tell kind of your personal journey of your family, your daughter, your journey as well. But that you have some really nice take home points in the chapter. So it's like a very easy read. I'm in a book club now, so I've been reading some stuff that's easy to read and some that isn't, but this is really good. So just tell me a little bit about, I guess, your journey. The book is kind of about your journey, but also your daughter's. I guess what inspired you to write the book? Because on a personal level, I'm kind of interested. It's a big undertaking to write a book.
Yeah. No, Rose. So what I was going to say is that, writing a book is daunting. It is daunting. Yes. So this actual process took me a full 10 years, start to finish. So just so you know, I definitely have always been a writer. I'm so obsessed with, writing in journals. I got my first journal when I was 13 years old, and I've written in a journal ever since then. Wow. And I have every single one of them. So I have all the copies, and, it's That's so neat. Funny to look back and see what
you could turn that into a book. I was actually just at a business conference called CEX here in Cleveland with all these content creators, and that could become a book.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So I would have to edit it a little of writing for an audience. But, it's always been a therapeutic process for me. Yeah. And so I decided that I wanted to share my story in a way that could be supportive and of service to other parents like me. When I was a new mom, and certainly when my daughter, Arizona, was first diagnosed with autism, and then, myriad diagnoses a little bit before and after that, I felt very, very isolated, and I felt very alone. I felt very much in the dark. And, we live here in Los Angeles, California, which is chock full of resources. And still, I felt very much like, wow, I just kind of have to roll up my sleeves and figure this out by myself, truly.
Right.
And so I wanted to share my story in a way that was, sort of anecdotal in terms of, part memoir, but then also part sort of roadmap / guidebook for, those out there who are struggling with trying to figure out what to do now, what to do next, what to not do, what, and we all have different journeys, obviously. And there are some things that I think can be assistful to all of us in my book. And I'm so glad that you said it was an easy read, because that was my intention. And I was thinking, me as a caregiver, extreme caregiver, mother, I love reading, delicious 350-page tomes, but I just don't have the time and the energy.
Right.
So I had that in mind as well. So I appreciate that feedback.
Yes. Oh, good. I love that. So tell us a little bit about your journey. It seemed like when your daughter was born, she was your first child. Is that correct? Okay. And it seemed like just like from the beginning, she was having lots of difficulties, like with feeding. And I saw that you had a night nurse at one time and you had some guilt around that. And then you had your own medical and health journeys. Can you just kind of talk us through she's born and then what happens? Because there are a lot of stressful kind of things that all kind of transpired.
Yes. So just to give a little bit of background, my daughter's now 18 years old. So she just turned 18. She likes to remind me that she's a legal adult now. And, that's a whole nother set of challenges. But certainly as a new mom, I was really, really I could not wait to be a mom. So there was that. I was obsessed with motherhood from the very beginning of time. So I was really looking forward to it, thought I was super well trained. I have a lot of siblings. I babysat a lot. I'm around kids a lot. So I just thought that I was very well equipped, physically, emotionally, psychologically. And that just was not the case, because at every turn, I felt like my experience was so unexpected. Definitely much different than the vision that I had originally had for myself for motherhood. So it was, it was stressful in that way. I was trying to shift and change and learn how to be flexible, which is a very challenging thing for me in my controlling type A personality. I just felt like very much a failure in the very beginning, because I wasn't being able to understand all of my child's needs. She had a lot of them and she cried a lot. And it turns out that she was initially diagnosed with severe food allergies. She still has a lot of food allergies. That was a very troubling and challenging time, because it was scary. It was very scary. And while she's sort of being diagnosed with that first stage of the motherhood journey for me, I fell into a debilitating episode of postpartum anxiety and depression. And so I have had those episodes before in my life, but I never knew what to label them. And I never, for sure, was never taking care of anyone else when I was going through these episodes. So it was just kind of doubling down on the stress and the anxiety. And so I felt like there's so much going on. It was very challenging for me to ask for help and receive help. It's very not in alignment with my personality at all. I'm very capable, I'm very resourceful. I can figure it out. And it was really such a troubling journey. And then the diagnoses kept continuing. So.
Right. That's really hard. And so what I felt, it was hard for you. You couldn't sleep. I mean, I think that's something important to point out, that I felt like that's got to be so hard. Here you have a baby. It's maybe not what you had expected. You had a vision of maybe what it was going to be like, and then it wasn't. So that's probably a whole host of emotions. Then you yourself cannot sleep, and then are getting cared for in that way too. Like what you said, you're used to being able to take care of yourself, but now you're having to take care of somebody else who it seems like she was getting diagnosed with, the food allergies and crying and upset. And I can't imagine how that was. And your mom came out to help you, or you did have some family support there? Right?
I did. I certainly would have done it differently had I planned it a little bit better. But again, I was thinking, I got this,
Right.
I'm good here.
Right.
I'm doing here. Yeah. So my mom is a professor, still is to this day. And so my daughter was born in the summertime. And so she had the summer off. And She came to live with us for a week, and it was the most amazing and delicious week of my life because I felt like an instant bond and connection with her as soon as I had my daughter. And I don't know, it just, everything seemed easier with her. Because, we're going the motions, but she's there with me and, helped me give Arizona her first bath. I mean, all of these things. It was so beautiful and lovely and amazing. And my husband at the time, we have since divorced, but he was working from home for that first week as well. And this was back in the day when remote work was really that common. So he was home for a week. My mother was with me for a week. And I was like, once again, I got this. Once again. But then when he went back to work and my mother left, I just remembered holding my baby and standing on the front porch, and just weeping, sobbing. I mean, my emotions were already so all over, up and down because of my hormones and everything else. So it was a very, very, very emotional time. And it just kept getting harder and harder for me from that point.
Yeah, it's hard. You do feel alone. So I'm from Ohio, we were talking before, and I lived in Austin, Texas for 3 years because of my husband's work. And I had my first baby down there. And it's like, I couldn't even drive my parents to the airport. Like, I was just like, after a while, I would just be like sobbing, depressed the entire weekend. I just felt really lonely out there. But now I've lived back in Ohio, and that's been good for me. But you feel really isolated, especially not being kind of where you're from. And honestly, it's like nice to make mom friends, but it's like once your kids get older, that doesn't happen like when your baby's born. It's hard. There's a lot of hard things. So talk us through Arizona's so she's diagnosed with the food allergies, and then kind of what else did her development and that trajectory kind of look like?
Yeah, great question. So initially she was crying all the time. So obviously there was something going on above and beyond like just colic, because it just went well beyond the 3-month marker. And then she started developing rashes, eczema, started covering her body until she was pretty much covered head to toe in eczema. And so it just took a while to get the actual like official food allergy diagnoses, because they have to do prick tests, they did blood tests, they did so many different tests. And she was covered in rashes. It was actually even hard for them to find a clean surface on her back to do the actual prick test. So it took a while to figure out exactly what the specific allergies were. And so that was a journey and a process. And again, she's crying. I'm trying to placate her. I'm trying to make her as comfortable as possible, but it was almost impossible because of, how everything was manifesting physically on her body. And so it took about 18 months, the first 18 months of her life. By the way, she cried nonstop for the first 18 months of her life. And it was really not until that point that we had really figured out the food allergies, had organized, what she needed to eat and supplement in terms of nutrients. And the eczema like slowly started to leave her body. It was phenomenal to witness. And that's when we were kind of like, now we can start from here. And now she's sort of awakening to the world, because prior to that, it was she just wanted to scratch herself all the time. She just, even when we put her down to, start learning how to crawl, she would just scratch her head in the carpet. And, so we thought there were, one of my sisters who was a mother already at that point was like, there's something different about Arizona. Maybe you should have her checked out. And we went to a few specialists, and the first one was kind of like, oh yeah, well, nothing is wrong. Everything is, she's developing normally. It's just that she had all of these medical issues for the first 18 months of her life. And so she's just going to be delayed in terms of now she can open up and see the outside world, but she'll just get caught up, And I said, okay. And I just had to check in with my mommy gut, because that just didn't really sit. Right. So we kept going and kept asking, more questions.
Right. And then when does she get diagnosed, and how old was she when she got diagnosed as being autistic? Because then you do talk about her services, then she's getting certain services. And you discuss that in the book as well, which is, that's why I like to have parents on and people with autism, because I think it makes us, it makes us better providers to hear your stories. So when did she get diagnosed then as having autism?
She was diagnosed around 2.5 years old.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah. That was the autism spectrum diagnosis.
Yep.
Autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, rather. Mm-hmm. And that was very challenging to hear. It was very unfamiliar. Again, this was, let's see, my daughter's 18 now. So
long
this
time
was
ago.
Yeah.
The incidence rate was different. And I mean, they used to say, and I don't even say it anymore, but they used to say, and it's 4 to 1. It used to be 242, 1 in 242 births when I started presenting, like maybe 15 years ago, and 4 to 1 boys. They always said that. They may still say that on the CDC website, but I've had enough autistic females on that are late diagnosed that I don't say that anymore. I don't even talk about it anymore like that, because I think that's probably wrong somewhere. Okay. Yeah. So that was really, because now I feel like it is 1 in 36, I think now. And so I feel like, and with inclusion and supports and the neurodiversity movement, I do think, I'm in the autism world. So, but I do think more people know about autism, and it's on the radar of the general population, I would think.
For sure. For certain. Yeah. But again, 15 and a half years ago was a much different story.
Right.
So that was very challenging, and, it sort of compounded my feelings of isolation and, not being able to find community, very challenging.
Right. Absolutely. So then how did services go when she started getting, I know she got occupational therapy. It seemed like speech therapy. How did that go when you started then taking her for her various treatments?
So it was an interesting time. I think that I was sort of, wide-eyed and, deer in the headlights, but also very much like, okay, so now there's a plan, right? So tell me what to do. And I just sort of transitioned into, the let's go do it, warrior, mommy, let's figure it out. Again, very much in alignment with my personality.
Right.
Let me figure it out. And it was just kind of go from there. There were there were a couple of bumps in the road in terms of like, there are so many different therapists and offerings. And so we can't, always jive with every single person who we're going to be put in front of. And so we didn't have a lot of choice and option back then. It's just kind of like who was vendored with the regional center, or what did our insurance cover, all of the above. And so I remember Arizona's first experience with speech therapy was completely underwhelming. I was sitting there and observing, and the speech pathologist was basically just like holding up Skittles,
Oh, really?
Try to get Arizona's like eye contact or attention. It was. And I was thinking, okay, this is a child with like so many food issues and food allergies and aversions. And so she's never seen a Skittle. Like, that's not fun for, like, that means nothing to her. It just felt very much like she was training an animal.
Yeah, all wrong. Yeah. Well, that's just, especially with the food allergies. Like, I never use food in therapy, but food allergies, like, that's like, no.
It turns out that technically Arizona is not allergic to Skittles, because Skittles is like, whatever chemical and red dye. I don't know what it is. But it's not
you're in LA. You probably eat a lot healthier than I do. I'm not saying I eat Twinkies anymore, but I was raised on Twinkies and Pop-Tarts. I'm from Ohio. My mom is 86. She still brings Pop-Tarts over. I'll tell you what, the kids love them. They do.
Yeah.
Love them.
Delicious.
Probably eat 2 a year. I'm not going to lie. I do need to work on the, I'm not doing wheatgrass shots or anything that's very healthy. I'm definitely feeling like I need to eat something healthier tonight for dinner. You've inspired me. I know people in California eat a lot healthier than I do.
Yeah, but I don't do wheatgrass shots either.
Okay. But it's available. I'm just saying, when you go on the West Coast, I'm always amazed at, but I do Pilates every day, and I try to do yoga, but it's easier to be healthier out west. I feel like there's just a bigger focus on health, especially, in where you're located versus where I'm located. That's all I'm saying. I'm jealous. Yeah. So I'm surprised at the skill story just because of kind of your geographic location. I wouldn't think that would be. Yeah. And, I think that is, because I do parent coaching and coaching for professionals too that are international. So it's like, what's hard now is like, now that services, a lot of service, ABA and speech and all that are covered by insurance, parents do have a lot more choices here in the United States, and definitely depends on your geographic area, because you might be in an area where for speech therapy, if you have to go through an insurance provider, there's a huge wait list. So some people might be listening and like, oh, wow, it's nice to have choices. But with that becomes a lot of decision fatigue too, because there's probably a set amount of choices that are covered by insurance, and how that's all going to work is another stressor, I can imagine.
For sure.
Yeah. And then for her school, it seemed that I was a little, just because I am here in Ohio and I think California is different. Did she go to, and I know it sounded like she changed schools, but was it a public school, but you had to get into a lottery system? That I was a little bit confused on. Would you speak to that? Because that's something I was just talking to a parent in our ABA Speech Connection membership last night. We do these little case study talks. We were talking about her son, and he's getting ready to start school, a public school. And we were just talking about the school options versus staying in therapy and things like that. So how did that work for Arizona?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So initially, Arizona went to just a typical little preschool school 2 days a week, mornings a week, 9 to 12. And this was before she was diagnosed. So so she was probably around 2 years old. Mm-hmm. And I remember I chose this particular program because, number one, I could walk to it from our condo at the time. And number two, they didn't require potty training. Okay. And Arizona was a very late potty trainer. Mm-hmm. She was not even close to even learning how to potty train yet when she was 2. Yeah, and so a lot of like preschools were just like, must be potty trained. So those were the 2 criteria that were like, okay, this will work. But it was during that time that, we started the diagnosis process, and it just wasn't a good fit for her. So then through the regional center, through getting funding for, her diagnosis, we were able to put her into sort of like a preschool setting, like a therapeutic preschool setting. Mm-hmm. From there, she applied to different schools. We were looking at some independent schools. We were looking at some sort of public charter schools, and 2 of them were lottery based, and one of them was based on, sort of she had to come in and be interviewed, and she got into that. She actually got into all 3 schools, but the other 2, since they were lottery based, we were like, but you don't really know our child. And with the independent school that she got into for developmental kindergarten, at the age of 5, we were like, well, you interviewed her and you thought she could fit in. And we were so upfront with her challenges and issues, and they were like, no, I think she'll be fine. And, she did answered all the questions, but it turns out that was not the best fit for her. And so after about maybe 6 months there, they sort of were like, this is not going to work out. And so I ended up pulling her out in April of that first school year. But I had found out about another therapeutic program called Cheerful Helpers, Child and Family Study Center, which I write about extensively in this book, 2 chapters exclusively. And it ended up being like the best kept secret. It still is the best kept secret. Should not be in Los Angeles. And it was a small, tiny little program. I still sit on actually sit on the board of directors for them now. It's been so life-changing for us. And then from there, after she was there for about 2.5 years, then she entered into the Los Angeles Unified School District public school system starting first grade. And she still is in LAUSD, currently in high school. And it has been a phenomenal place for us in terms of resources and support. For her
wonderful. Yeah, I had on the podcast, Shelley Bader. She was the head speech therapist a long time ago, I'm amazed. It's a huge undertaking. That district is, it's huge. I mean, I just love the inner workings of that. It was really interesting to talk to her. Yeah, it's just such a big district. How cool. So what does your daughter think of the book? I'm curious. I have a 13-year-old, almost 14, and she terrifies me sometimes.
Yeah.
So what did she think about the book? Is she like your advocacy, or do you guys ever do things together? Because I had it'll air after your episode, but I have a member in my ABA Speech Connection membership, Cindy, and her daughter. Her daughter is a little bit younger, like maybe 2 years younger than your daughter, has some similar diagnoses, and she came on the podcast. They came on as a mother daughter duo, and it was neat because her daughter shared about her therapy and what's been helpful, what hasn't been, what school placement was helpful, and things like that. Yeah. So, what does Arizona think of the book and all the things you're doing?
So she's okay with the book now, but she wasn't always okay with me telling her story or me talking about her. Right. And so the book that you have with you right now is in its like 78th iteration. Yeah. So, and she's always known that I've been writing. And she knew that I wanted to share my story with the world to be helpful. And so she, one of her first sort of markers and understanding what was going on was I started letting her, read the book. I started reading different chapters to her, and she had feelings about it in terms of like, that doesn't feel so good for people to know that and know that that is me. Yeah. So I just don't want my name in the book. It sort of threw me off because I had this entire title planned out with Right. And so, we sort of came to a compromise in terms of what would you like readers to know about this book? And so she wrote the foreword. And in the foreword, she actually says, I just want people to know that your true self is enough. And so that is how I got the title of my book. So I took out a lot of like extra information about, maybe some of the things that might be not so fun for her to hear about herself. Right. Yeah. And again, that's why it's sort of like I said, like part memoir, part guidebook to accommodate for that. It was very important for me to honor her, her wishes, and also very important for me to honor my, journey and wanting to share my story. This is my story. You're in it for sure. This is part of our journey. Right. And, this is my voice.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing. So if you had to give one piece of advice to parents who maybe think their child has a delay, or they're going through the autism evaluation process, or they're on a wait list to get an autism evaluation, because we know that is true in some parts of the world, what would your one piece of advice be for parents?
Yeah. And especially if a parent is sort of already sort of leaning this way, thinking or having the gut feeling that something is maybe different, I would say to just stay so in tune with that, that instinct, that mama gut, that papa gut, whatever it is, the caregiver gut. And just, as much as possible, just sort of take notes, observe, like listen to your child, even if they are non-speaking, kind of tapping into and tuning into their energy, their behaviors. And no detail is too little. I would just start writing everything down, just the way that they are in the world, the way that they are at home. What are the things that seem preferred? What are the things that don't seem preferred? What, just sort of tap into all of those things. And then once you can get in front of someone, or actually before you can even get in front of somebody, to just be as tenacious as possible, even if that is not your personality. I am saying to you, like, being an advocate for your child really requires, in my opinion, to just be seeking out as much help as possible. And so if you have that energy and intention around something is different, and I am just so curious and wondering about this child, and if you can talk in that way instead of like, well, I need answers and I need to figure this out and you need to tell me what to do and you need to get me into it. I'm saying whatever you need to do that feels in alignment with you, everything is okay. Everything will be okay. And I have found that the doors are open a little bit more when I can be as vulnerable and asking for as much help as possible. I feel like, that has been really helpful for me. And just knowing, as much as I can, about my own child to share with said professionals or whoever will listen, even if it's someone at the front desk. I mean, I've had to advocate for myself, like, no, I know that she's not taking any new patients, but you don't understand, I had this, right? And that has actually helped too. So man, being the squeaky wheel, but a nice wheel.
Yes.
I just need your help. Please, please, please.
Yes. Yeah. It's all about that ongoing communication. Well, I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, and Pick Up Your True Self is Enough. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. It was delightful to meet you.
Thanks, Rose.
Thanks for listening to Autism Outreach. If you enjoyed the show today, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode full of actionable strategies you can use in your therapy room. Write a review too. That would mean so much to me. I always love hearing from you. Have a specific topic that you want included on a future show? Reach out over on Instagram, ABA Speech by Rose, or visit me at www.abaspeech.org.